Good afternoon, everybody. So I have no slides to present, just free-flowing random thoughts, stream of consciousness, because we're talking about attention. And I'm seeing roughly about half the people in this room riveted to their cell phones right now, which speaks volumes about the amount of attention that we have. So just imagine the amount of attention that our students have. Fact. I'm going to draw a parallel from advertising. In the US economy, if you trace how advertising evolved over the years, back in the 60s, 50s, 1960s, 1970s, roughly about 10% of the ad was devoted to entertainment before the first information about the brand was actually featured. Today that number is higher than 40%, which means you got to entertain before you inform. Dr. Agnihotri rightly pointed out that this is a battle for attention. I just saw some pretty interesting statistics. The average duration a millennial spends on watching a video on YouTube or Snapchat before deciding it is interesting or not, 2 seconds. Just imagine how they are dealing with your class. So this is an attention economy. This is a battle for people's attention. And attention is absolutely vital. But when we talk about engagement, one part of it relates to attention. And let me also point out one more thing. We are talking to omni-channel shoppers who freely flit between the online and the offline mode of shopping, for clothes, for groceries, you name it. It's the same story with education. They are omni-channel students. They get information through Google, as you rightly pointed out, through every other source, and then they come into the classroom. Do they really want to be informed? They get all that information anyway. So what else are we giving them? How are we engaging them? How are we keeping their attention engrossed? That's a question that we always have to ask ourselves in terms of how are we challenging our students to think beyond the boundaries of what we teach in the classroom. The more we are able to challenge them, and I tell my students, collectively you guys have far more experience. I teach students with about 3 to 5 years of experience. Collectively, they have far more experience than I have. I worked in industry for 10 years. They have probably 10 times that experience, 50 times that experience. I tell them, don't be afraid to call bullshit on me. Don't be afraid. Why do we intimidate our students to sit there passively absorbing information when they are the kind of people who want to question? The more we are able to engage them, the more we are able to pique their curiosity, the more we are able to get them to think differently, the more they will be engaged. And that sense of curiosity is something that we have to inculcate at all times. That is really what engagement is. Engagement is not simply about catching their eyes with entertainment alone. Engagement is about cognitive engagement. Engagement is about how you get them to think differently. Every class of mine that I teach, I begin with a mystery. I'll give you one example of a mystery that I began with, that I started my class with. It was the story of the Titanic, about how this ship set sail from Southampton in England for New York, and it hit an iceberg and it sank, taking with it more than 1,500 lives. The belief on board the ship was that all you need to do is to keep a watch out for visible icebergs. And as long as you can spot the iceberg, you can alter course, and you can change your direction, and you can avoid the iceberg. And this practice had been what had been done year after year. Well, of course, you know what happened to the Titanic. But then what does this have to do with the study of marketing? Was a question I posed to all my students. The answer to that question was embedded throughout the lecture, and they had to basically pick up the clues. And the one simple thing was that what consumers tell you, or what is visible on the surface, is not necessarily what is true. That there is something hidden under the surface that you need to use marketing research to try and find out. And so the whole idea that I was trying to develop was the sense of trying to question, of building that sense of curiosity. The third angle I want to touch upon, so apart from attention through entertainment and all of that, apart from curiosity, the third angle that I want to touch upon is what I would call emotional engagement. How do we get people to feel connected to you? There was this slide that I saw a little earlier where you have this sage on the stage. I think, Amy, you had this, right? Sage on the stage. As long as you maintain a distance between you and your students, you are not going to connect. And these are connectors. These are people who actually want to connect. If you as faculty are able to build that emotional connection with your students, that gets them a lot more engaged. So the more we maintain that distance, that we are the gurus, that we can basically be there, up there, occupying the hallowed heights of our academic, ivory tower, the less we will engage our students. So, three themes that I wanted to touch upon in the context of what I call engagement. I want to prescribe 3 ideas that one can explore in the classroom and outside. What gives students happiness? Let's think about that. When we talk about engagement, what makes them happy? I'm going to propose 3 ideas of happiness. Number 1, autonomy. Students feel a sense of happiness when they feel that they are actually learning on their own, when they feel that they have done something by themselves. Anyone been to an IKEA store? Have you built something yourself? Assemble that desk or whatever that you bought. Have you done it by yourself? You got someone, TaskRabbit, to come and help you. Has anyone done it themselves? So you know what it feels like. The happiness that you get out of doing something yourself. It's called the IKEA effect. It's actually a well-known research finding that the IKEA effect, the happiness that you get even out of making something that is imperfect, is far, far better than what you would get out of doing something by yourself, having someone else do it for you. So, autonomy. How can we bring in autonomy into the classroom? I was encouraged by some of the ideas that, in the previous session, people had about, how we empower people to create their own blogs and do things by themselves, write on various topics. That's something that should be strongly encouraged. The second idea is mastery. That you feel that you are better than everyone else. Nothing excites this generation more than competition. That gets them completely, their adrenaline up. More simulations where teams compete against each other and there's a leaderboard and you gamify it, you will see your engagement go up in your class. And the third idea I want to touch on is what I would call relationships or relational engagement, which is about how creating groups of people who connect with each other, not just through the what they do in the classroom, but what they do outside it. More peer-to-peer learning. Once again, the previous session had lots of very interesting ideas on how peer-to-peer learning can be incorporated into the class. The more you do that and the more examples you share about what you have learned, and the more you are able to share those things through video or whatever form, the more there is engagement. So to cut things short, again, this is all stream of consciousness, whatever comes to my mind that I'm just talking about. But I think it's very, very important to recognize that today's generation is very different in the way they engage. And the more all of us as faculty sitting here recognize that and incorporate technology, incorporate new methods in teaching our students, engaging them, the better the learning outcomes will be. So thank you all very much.